This is Stewart Copeland, and you're listening to Sound Vapors.
Hey everyone, it's Tommy Marz, Sound Vapors Podcast. Hope everybody is doing well out there. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this episode. Today's show, it's actually a treat for me personally because I have my favorite drummer of all time stopping by the show again, and that's Stewart Copeland of the band The Police. The last time that Stewart and I had a chance to chat, it was about the 35th anniversary of Synchronicity. And if you're keeping score, that happens to be one of my 3 favorite records of all time. But this time around, we got into everything that's going on in the world of music for Stewart Copeland. We got into him writing scores, playing live music, collaborating, making music, all of that good stuff. We even got into the 40th anniversary of Zenyatta Mondatta, which is coming up here in just a few months. And I think my favorite part was I got to ask him some questions that I've always wanted to know. I've always wanted to know the answer to, and it pertains to Zenyatta Mondatta. What I really wanted to find out is if Sting buried the tapes for Behind My Camel, the song that Andy Summers wrote, and I wanted to see if that was true. Did he really go out into the garden out back and dig a hole and put them down there? Stewart tells me the scoop. He gives me everything on it. The second part of that question was, what was everybody's reaction when the band won a Grammy for that song Behind My Camel? And specifically, what was Andy's, what was Sting's reaction? Stewart gave me the lowdown on that too. So it was really, really entertaining. It was just a great conversation. So what I'm going to do now is pull up that chat, and I hope you guys enjoy. This is Stewart Copeland, The Police. Yeah. It's my pleasure to welcome back to the show one of the greatest drummers of all time, certainly my favorite, Mr. Clark Kent, a.k.a. Stewart Copeland. How you doing, sir?
Excellent. It's raining in California, which is weird, but otherwise fine.
Hey, you know what? I've been listening to a lot of the Clark Kent stuff, like on YouTube. They have like the collected works on there. And I got to ask you, you've got so much going on, but have you ever thought about doing another like version of something like that with that? Or do you have songs like that recorded in your vault somewhere?
Well, I do have a Clark Kent song that I recorded at the Sacred Grove and did the movie of it, all one guy, because I can do video overdubs with my locked-off cameras. As you can see on the Sacred Grove, I can overdub video and have 2 Snoop Dogs or 2 Danny Careys or whatever. Because since the cameras don't move, I can put a mat on and have another shot of the same person standing in a different part of the room, and now there's 2 of them. And so I've actually got a Clark Kent song in the vault, waiting for the moment for it to unleash it upon the world. When the world is more deserving, Clark Kent will return. But actually, I think there's 4 Clark Kents in the shot, leaping around. One day, if the world is virtuous.
I hope it happens. That would be really cool because, I'm such a big fan of all the stuff that you do. And of course I started out, fan with the Police and everything. And I feel like there's a moment in time that is captured with that stuff, especially when you start talking about, the original record.
Well, it did have kind of a do-it-yourself vibe. Because I did it all my gosh darn self.
Well, that's what I say. It's truly a solo record because a lot of times solo record means, you've got studio musicians, you do everything on it. That's truly a solo record.
Even the singing, unfortunately.
No, it's good. Actually, I like your voice because, there's a thing out there. I think it was in the Police box set. I may be saying it wrong, but I think it was your first vocal version, where you have your piano and does everybody,
that's right, yeah.
Same way and I thought it was really good, actually. I like the rawness of it.
Well, I guess it does have a certain raw charm.
Yeah, for sure. Well, hey, I guess let's get on with this. So you're crazy busy and your schedule it's almost hard to keep up with everything you got going on. So I was wondering if we could start with the Oysterhead stuff.
We had too much fun with Oysterhead. We knew it was going to be fun because we had fun last time, but 20 years have gone by since we first got together, and 14 years have gone by since our last show, and it was more fun than we ever imagined because it's unfettered. We go back to the thing, set lists are for wimps. Material is for wimps. And the amazing thing is that the audience that came out to Denver, and hopefully the ones who come out for future shows, are there for an unfettered, making it up on-the-spot experience. And luckily, both these 2 guys I'm working with are very good at that. I'm a song guy, verse, chorus, verse, chorus. But Les and Trey and me, kind of following their lead, they go out there and just make the shit up right there in front of God and everybody. And the people who come out for that show, that's what they came for. And, according to my rule book, indulgent doesn't do justice to the amount of indulgence. There's one song we played, a song called Armies on Ecstasy. And we start up and we get into the groove and we're jamming on it this way and we're jamming on it that way. And 20 minutes later we think, let's stop now and play something else. We hadn't even got to the song yet.
Nice.
We played, the introduction was so long we never even got to the song. My heart is full with love for the people who come out to Oysterhead shows, because it is so much fun to do that. We do have actual material. We loosely referred to as songs. We do actually have a material, but we don't adhere to it. We take it out this way and we take it out that way. And it is really, I guess jazz is like that, where the audience comes out and they expect to see you create something right there in front of them. And if there are some moments where it's dragging a bit, that's just proof that this has never happened before and will never happen again.
So, like, during a show, will you guys be kind of in a sort of a jam part? Will you kind of look at each other and say, okay, let's go into this song? Do you guys call out songs?
Well, we may be looking at each other. We may be staring off into space, but we're listening. And that's the best thing about these two guys is they're listening. Les does something, or Trey does something, and the other guy hears it right away and picks up on it. And I hear it, and we're on it, and we follow it. And then we're doing this thing that Trey came up with, and then Les throws a curved ball, and we jump on that train. And the audience can really feel it. It's really a communication with the audience. I can feel, like when we go out on a strange rhythmic tangent, we're doing dun 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 bum 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 bum. When we kick back in, the place rises up.
Yeah, it sure does. There's video of it out there. Actually, the place just explodes. God, that's music. That's what it's all about, man.
Well, art does that. You're supposed to create tension and then release it. And I learned something. I did a documentary for the BBC. What is music and why? Why do we have music? What does music do to us? And I talked to all kinds of scientists. I went to Harvard, talked to Steven Pinker, talked to Daniel Levitin, who wrote This Is Your Brain on Music. Went to Princeton, Stanford, as well as talking to, Sting, Steve Reich, Francis Coppola, Danny Elfman, and others. Why do humans respond to music? And it's this tension and release thing, but it's also the communal aspect of it, And one thing I learned from talking to Honey Dijon, who's a DJ, and she goes out there, she didn't even make the music, but her skill, her gift, her talent is to read the audience and to build them up. And build them up, and build them up. And I'm going, drop the bomb. She says, no, hold on. We got to get a lot more tension going here. And she's showing me how she does this, and I'm going crazy. I'm eating the furniture. Please drop the bomb. And finally she does, and it's huge. And so, actually I showed Les and Trey these 3 episodes of the BBC series. And Trey said, that's exactly what I do. The DJ woman, the lady there, Honey Dijon, that's what it's all about. That's what Fish does. And they ride it, and they take it out, and they take it further out, and they take it even further out, and they create that tension, and then drop the bomb.
Yeah, I love how you explain that, because there is a talent too with that DJing. People think, hey, I can just spin songs and it's that. No, there's a uniqueness to that as well. I like that. Can you explain how this kind of got together? I mean, what was the timeline of you guys saying, hey, let's play some shows together?
Well, over the years, we've been getting crazy offers, getting crazier and crazier and crazier. And then there was a coincidence of a gap in the Primus and Fish and Trey Anastasio calendars, so we could say yes to this crazy offer from Denver, 2 nights in an arena there. And finally, because we've been wanting to do this for years, decades, and finally the little window opened up. Now, Trey is the main problem, because when he's finished doing Fish, then he goes out on his own with an acoustic guitar. When he's finished doing that, he goes out with his own band, the Trey Anastasio Band, which is got a brass section and percussionists, and it's 10 guys on stage. Then, when he's finished doing that, he goes out and plays with the symphony orchestras, and when he's finished doing that, there might be a little window for Oysterhead.
Okay.
I don't know where Oysterhead fits on the hierarchy of all those other things, but I think it went up a few notches there because we did have too much fun, and we're all looking forward to some more of that. And the same with Primus, by the way. When Les isn't busy doing Primus, he's doing his Sean Lennon thing, and when he's not doing that, he's got 10 different projects as well. My projects tend to be. I work at home. I'm composing. I don't make albums anymore. I create opera documents, scores. So I just do that day after day at home. And then when there is a show, it's a show, and I go and I show up for that show. But it's not like I'm on tour all year. I'm at home all year.
Right. But it's evident that the fan bases out there, they want it. Like the Bonnaroo thing. When that schedule came out, my eye went right to that. For whatever reason, when the poster came out, I was like, whoa. And then I saw Primus on there as well, but I was like, Oysterhead? I was like, oh, hell yes. I was like really excited. So I know I wasn't the only one.
Well, we did very well at Bonnaroo last time, which was also, we hadn't seen each other for years, for 5 or 10 years, for a very long time, but we got together. We sort of did our rehearsal in the dressing room, in the trailer, behind the stage at Bonnaroo.
That's insane. You guys are just, it's not even fair.
What makes it work is that we figured out a form of telepathy.
All right. So like what, E.T.? What are we talking here?
Well, no, musical. We hear the music. I hear where Trey is going with that. I can see what he's doing. I know where he's going to, I can guess how he's going to pay it off. And he surprises all the time, and that makes it even better.
Well, you're talking about these schedules and how busy you guys are. I mean, so I'm just going to ask, is there any shot of you guys getting in a studio situation and like writing some songs, maybe not recording, but writing new songs and getting something down?
Well, I'd rather make the shit up on stage in front of people and they can stream it. Personally, I would probably edit it down by about an hour or two of the 2.5-hour set. But that's just my own listening taste. My playing taste is I like to play. And I can't believe we come off stage and we've been up there for 2.5 hours. That's against my religion. That sets a bad example. I consider anything over 90 minutes to be audience abuse.
So you're not recording. You said you're writing, but you've got this great space in the Sacred Grove.
Well, the reason why I like the Sacred Grove so much is because musicians come over here, and I've got cameras around the room, and everything's mic'd up, so I just hit record, and the whole room is in record. Every square foot has got a microphone on it recording, so that if Les walks over here, or Ben Harper walks over there, or Stanley Clark, whoever picks up an instrument, it's in record, no matter what. And there's no engineer. There's no record being made. We're just hamming it up, and that's a lot of fun. But as soon as you're making a record, a whole X factor shrivels up and dies.
Wow. Well, I totally get it.
And by the way, for me, that's just drums. Overdubbing guitar, I love all that, yeah. But laying down drums for a song, oh my God, please, can we call Taylor Hawkins instead?
Right. So now you're doing the Police Deranged for orchestra. You've got that coming up like later this year.
Yes, I will be playing drums to those old tunes, but I have fucked them all up. Hopefully not beyond recognition. Because the fun thing is that they have power, and that's why I'm doing them, is because the familiarity gives them power. And that's a completely different animal from Oysterhead. Every note is on the page. I will get there with an orchestra, 50 guys who will absolutely faithfully execute every indication on the page. And that's where you get a guitarist, and their mojo is that you can tell them the broad outlines of what you want, and then they take it from there. And if you don't like what he does, you get a different guy. With orchestras, for the orcs, you put it on the page. And that's what I spend all my time doing these days, is putting information onto a page. Not just what notes to play, but how to play them. It's not da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. It's da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, And so all that articulation, the Italian I call it, put the Italian on the page, is the decoration to tell them how to play it. And these players, their whole entire ethos, these are players of the eye rather than players of the ear, their entire ethos is to faithfully obey the page. Because if I, on my oboe, do exactly what it says on my score, and by the way, I don't even see what anyone else is playing, I'm just looking at my oboe part, that's it. If I do exactly as it says here, then the tuba and the cello and the harp, who are on the same line in different octaves, they're also reading their part. And if I do my part correctly, all of us are a mighty symphony. And that's where their pride comes from, is how they work as an ensemble. That's their thing, is to work together and create one beast. So, what that means, when I go and do Police Deranged for Orcs, they're all exactly on the page, doing exactly what they do. I, on the other hand, can go here, I can go hither and yon, because it's my name on the ticket. And I'm not very good or disciplined about doing it exactly the same every night anyway. So I can go where I want to go, different every night. Kind of Oysterhead hangover. But the Orcs are all on the page. And what that material is, the deranged material, comes from the soundtrack to the movie that I made of my Super 8 footage of the police. Everyone Stares. I cut up my Super 8 footage and made a movie out of it. To score it, I took the songs and I was able to get into the vault and get Pro Tools sessions of a lot of these big tracks, the big police tracks. And I carved them up. I put the vocal of Can't Stand Losing You over the riff of Roxanne, and I switched the verses, basically lobotomized, fucked it all up. But it's still all very familiar. It's still all that guitar sound and those riffs and everything else. So the derangement, and I call them derangements. And one day, actually, Universal might release them. They're kind of cool, if I say so myself. Although, quite reasonably, Sting and Andy, absolutely justifiably, Sting and Andy, did not necessarily approve of me taking all the material and changing it all around. Wait a minute, what are you doing with our stuff here, our sacred material? But they were forgiving enough and broad-minded enough and liberal enough to allow me to use it as the score for the movie. And what cheered Andy up was that he's pretty much the star of the movie. So I have these derangements, which are these alternate versions of police songs. And that's what I'm orchestrating for these shows. I combined two versions of Don't Stand So Close to Me, of which there are two records, both in a different key. And I figured out how to join them together, the two different versions. But everything derives from something that they played. The guitar lines that I have in derangements, those are Andy guitar lines that he played. He might not have been on the record. It was on some track, some, ignored track, some overdub that we never used. Well, I found it and I've used it. And so all the stuff derives from random bass lines or vocalizations or guitar parts from my two colleagues, but I've put them to a new use.
Wow, that is so interesting to me. As somebody that knows the catalog, wow, that's really...
If you go on YouTube, you can probably find these arrangements.
Yeah, I actually, after our call, that's where I'm headed, actually. That's what I was going to do, actually, was go look. So, cool. So you got a couple Nashville... Actually, it looks like you got 3 Nashville shows in October. I got to get down to one of those, man. I got to see this thing in person.
When you say get down from where?
I'm in Detroit.
Oh, okay.
And actually, man, sorry I missed you when I was in Los Angeles, because what I wanted to do was kind of catch you in your element, like Sacred Grove or something like that. Hopefully I'll get there at some point. But what do you have going on there right now?
Well, it has been very busy around here. I've got 3 operas in production this year, and I've got to finish the score for the German National Opera. This piece called "The Electric Saint," about Nikola Tesla and the creation of the modern world. And it's 2.5 hours, and I'm about 30 minutes from the end of the orchestration. The music comes very quickly. It's a gift from God. It comes from God knows where, and it just flows. The orchestration, creating that page and putting the Italian on it, takes a very long time. I get between 3 and 7 minutes a day of orchestration, just working my way down and figuring out, should that be an oboe or a flute? Let's see. The singers are down in this range here, which means that I can't overpower them, so I need, maybe not those guys, use something lower down, maybe the French horns that's softer so that they can, okay, this is a loud part here. How loud exactly? The soprano's singing right up there at the top of her range, so I can actually have quite a bit of orchestration underneath her because she's loud up there. And these considerations, when you're making a record, which is music that comes out of speakers, you hear it right away, and you make a decision. Boom, you're done. Move on, and you just move a fader till it sounds great. But when you're creating a score on paper for someone else 6 months from now to squint at the page and do what I said they're supposed to do, I kind of have to make the decision here, imagining how that soprano is going to sound against those trombones. And so there's a lot more dithering and a lot more careful consideration of every decision as I work my way from left to right across the page.
How many hours do you have into this thing?
Well, let's see here. I actually have my diary right here. The orchestration, I am on day 33 of the orchestration. They're not all, there's days, stuff in between, such as going to Oysterhead shows. But 33 days at my desk on just the orchestration, and I'm at 2 hours. I'm at 1.5 hours of orchestration has taken me 33 days. Now the composing, if I look back to when I wrote the damn thing, that started back in. I started that back in January, and so the orchestration began in January. And that's a different diary, which I haven't got in front of me. But just the orchestration took me, 80 days to write it. It did take me longer to write it. That can't be right. But anyhow, you get the general idea. It takes longer than making an album, that's for sure.
Well, I said at the beginning you're a busy guy, but geez, it's like worse than I thought. Okay, well, hey, man.
The other thing is that I had 2 other pieces, Satan's Fall, which is a piece for giant choir, for the Mendelssohn Choir in Pittsburgh. 80 singers, blasting. Now, people were asking me, is it a rock opera? No, it's a metal opera. In fact, it's not even an opera. It's what they call an oratorio, which is a piece for a choir, where 80 of them are on stage and they sing this piece. They're not necessarily acting and scene changes and everything. And it's called Satan's Fall, about the fall of Satan from grace. What the fuck is up with Satan? What's his problem? Well, the answer exists in a tome, a giant work of literature by John Milton called Paradise Lost. And the story within the story of that 100,000 words, this epic poetry, is the story of Satan and what happened. What's the deal with Satan? And so this piece there with 80 singers, it's 3 days of battle where the forces of good and the forces of evil, it's loud and it's aggressive and percussive. There's a small orchestra, no guitar or anything, so it's heavy metal with the vocals but not the guitars. And so that opened in Pittsburgh, and it's got 7 other choirs are putting it on over 2020 and 2021. And so that goes off. It has a life of its own now. I create a piece and it goes out into the world and other people do their thing with it. I may be there in the audience or not. And further, just a couple of weeks ago, The Invention of Morel, which is an opera that I wrote 4 or 5 years ago, went up again in Manchester, Indiana, the university there, and I went over to check it out and watch them do it. And the thing that I've created, the document, this hefty document with the full orchestra score and the singers, stage directions, everything. It's a document, and it's giant. It's a slab about 4 or 5 inches thick, about 1.5 feet by 2 feet, and it's the complete operating instructions for in this case a 90-minute opera. And so I go over there, and they've been working on it, and a director from the Met is coaching the production and everything, and they interpret it, and I go there and say, oh gosh, so that's how you handle this scene here. Oh, interesting. But it's not me. It's the thing itself. The opera itself is out in the world interacting with talent that decides to put it on. It's kind of interesting to watch. Yeah, I have had instances where I show up to, there's an Edgar Allan Poe piece that I showed up, The Telltale Heart, which is about the sanity of this murder. He conducts this murder, and Edgar Allan Poe, the first person seeing it, says, look how sanely, you can't call me mad. Look how sane I am as I hide to scrape up every drop of blood. And, And so I get to this production, and I arrive for it. I haven't been there for all their rehearsals and then design meetings and everything. And the director said, "Yeah, it's insane. It's the chaos of insanity." And I go, "That's not what Mr. Poe intended." And I have to sit there in the audience. And by the way, it actually was pretty cool. I completely was not what I had in mind at all, but it had its own logic. They took what I put on the page, the document, the operating instructions, and did something that I didn't even expect. That's kind of cool.
That is kind of cool. Are you the type of person, if you're sitting there and are you analyzing it from what was written?
My heart is full of love and gratitude that they have devoted all that energy and resources into taking my document and putting it up on the stage and putting it in front of an audience and performing it themselves in front of people. Mm-hmm. Whatever they want to do, I am disposed to love them. Even if I disagree, they go, "Oh my God, oh my God." I give it up. It doesn't bother me. I know artists who create something and they do not want it messed with. But I take my guidance from good old Sting, who loves to have his material rethought, reinvented. As long as it's his song and he gets the credit for it. I sent him my version of "Don't Stand So Close to Me," the orchestra score. And he actually, he's a pretty good reader, and he went cross-eyed at what I've done. But cool, sure, great, love it. It makes him feel like Rodgers and Hammerstein to have people doing his song. I mean, he creates a song and he does it himself the way he thinks it should be, but then he's very accepting of other versions.
Really? Wow. I guess I just wouldn't have expected that. That's interesting. Okay. Well, the last time we spoke, it was a couple years ago. It was the 35th anniversary of Synchronicity, and then you've got 40 years as Zenyatta coming up here in the summer.
What do you know?
That is my second favorite Police record, and but I've read a lot of things, so I just wanted to ask you. I got you on the phone.
Well, my second favorite Police record.
It's not.
I would put it about number 5.
No, that's what I was going to ask you. No, really?
Well,
that's
that's not because of the quality of the album. I mean, I'm the worst judge of which albums are best or worst. For me, it's all about the experience of making it.
Yes, that's where I was going to ask. Okay, before I even ask, though, can you rank the Police albums?
My favorite would be the second album. The first is kind of in there, but, we sort of had found ourselves. I don't know, not quite sure how to rate the first one. The second one was, for me, the real buzz. That's where we really had the least material, but the most inspiration and the most mojo. We came off touring around the States. Sting hadn't had a chance to really write a lot of songs, so we kind of had to flesh their ideas out in the studio, which was really creative and really fun. And we were still, at that point, codependent and flexible. And by the way, that stuff I was saying about Sting doing his songs, he loves how other people do them. But if he's on the record, he's got a very ironclad vision of how it should be if it's his version of a record, even if he's a member of a band. So that second album, we were more pliable. The third album, Zenyatta, was when the record company were in our face saying, "Guys, you've had 2 hit albums now. You score with this one here, and you're going to the top. This is the big one. This is your big chance. Come on, guys. We need to hear hits, 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 hits." And they were in the studio, literally, staring at the floor, listening to the playbacks and deciding, is this a hit? Is that not a hit? And arguing amongst themselves, is this a hit? Well, I think that's a hit, And meanwhile, that was the beginning of it becoming not just our thing. It was the beginning of the corporate existence of the band. So the next 2 records, we went down to Montserrat in the Caribbean, 12 hours flight for the nearest record company executive. And nice. We had other problems then. It wasn't, we were back to doing our thing without thinking about whether they were hits or not, just whether we like it or not. But we found other ways to create misery for each other.
No. Okay, tell me about
and
that.
And now we laugh about it, by the way. We all appreciate it now, and we've very much hugged it out since then.
Well, what kind of ways to make misery? I mean, there's photo shoots, it's out there, the photos of you guys by the pool in Montserrat and stuff like that. But, photos only tell us a certain part of the story.
Well, it was paradise. What you see in the photos is paradise. But it was not paradise. It was hell on earth.
Oh my God. So the experience part for you, it ranks it a little bit, ranks it lower for you. Actually, you know what? Did you see the photos of that studio? There's some on Google and how it's all like dilapidated and just
the wood is rotten. And,
with vines growing through the studio windows and everything. Yeah. Very sad.
Yeah, that's very sad. Yeah. Well, I was going to ask you on Zenyatta was if you could tell me recall your favorite moment and your not so favorite moment of recording that album. But you kind of went there. So do you have a favorite moment of recording that time? No. Dang it. Okay. All right, man. Fair enough.
Andy playing Happy Birthday on his guitar, all distorted, like Jimi Hendrix doing Star Spangled Banner. I was there with my Super 8 camera, and I got the great shot. But because that song, when I made my film, was the most expensive song ever, since it has been declared public domain. But back then, when I made the film, to pay for Happy Birthday to You, which was owned at that time by the Michael Jackson estate, or actually no, by Michael Jackson himself, I couldn't use it in my movie. But it was a fun day in the studio. We've always gotten along pretty well as long as we're not making music. It's only when we start making music together, the three of us, that we have anything to argue about, because otherwise we get along pretty well.
What about playing together? Is it the same kind of bag?
Well, playing together in front of an audience, the audience is the referee, and that's what we're there for, and they light us up, so that's a different deal. Going into a studio without the audience, oh my God, hell on earth. With the best intentions,
Wow, that's so crazy. But 40 years, I mean, that's... When I just told you there, how does that make you feel? Not old, but like 40 years. I mean, that is such a long time ago, that album, and you have these memories that you just recall them so fast.
Well, all this time goes by, and I look at people who weren't even born then. For instance, on the reunion tour, there was a band opening for us at one of the shows. Usually it was Joe Sumner. This other band actually might have even been his guitarist. And I say, come on, dude, where were you in 77, man? Long hair, short hair, when did you decide to not be a hippie anymore? Come on, dude, fess up here. Where were you in 77? Stewart, I was born in 1979.
Right. Jeez. Yeah.
Well, I should have known that because Joe himself was a little baby in a cradle in 77.
Well, I'm going to tell you something from a fan perspective and going through all these years of, listening to your records and stuff. And truthfully, because when somebody asks me, I always say Synchronicity is my favorite, but I think it's just what you said. You have the memories of recording those albums, so it may skew your ranking, right? For me, Synchronicity is the first because it's 1983 and whatever things were happening that time. And I was listening to that record for comfort. For me, it'll always be number one because of that time. You know what I mean? So I get what you're saying about ranking it a certain way because, hey, that's what you were going through at the time. So, I mean, I get that. But I just...
I like all the albums. Don't get me wrong. Even Zenyatta. The last two albums were the most painful of all. But still, I like them. I like the result.
Right. Actually, I got a true or false. Is it true that Sting buried the tape of Behind My Camel?
That story has been told so much that I believe it, but I can't believe it because he would not go out to the garden, find a shovel from somewhere, dig a hole, put a reel of 2-inch magnetic tape with probably other tracks on that reel into the dirt, and then no, that did not happen.
I didn't think so either.
But he did hide it. He did hide it somewhere in the studio.
He did hide it.
Yeah.
Okay.
The hiding part is true. The digging a hole in the garden, how could that be true?
I thought the same thing. I was thinking nobody would actually do that. Like you said, go take the time, get a shovel, and then put tape that may possibly have other stuff on it. I thought the same thing. Okay, so here's one of these questions, and I know you can't speak for him how he feels, but okay, so there's all this stuff written about, with that song, and Sting didn't want to play on it. But what was the reaction in the band when that thing won a Grammy Award? There had to be a little bit of...
Oh, joy. My heart filled with joy. And poor old Stingo had to just sit there and take it. Come on, Stingo, give Andy your Grammy. Go on. He says, okay, you can have it, Andy, without actually handing it over.
Yeah, I always wondered what the room was like when that happened. I must have been... If I was Andy, I would have been I would have had a smile, 3 feet long.
No, I smiled on his behalf.
Before we go, could you give me a few words on Neil passing? You know, I mean, Rush has been so instrumental to a lot of people too, and I know that you guys are both, you know, revered so much. And I think you guys lived near each other over there in Los
he's
Angeles.
just around the corner. We spent, he came over to my studio a lot. I went down to his Bubba cave a lot, where he doesn't have any musical instruments, just cars and his motorcycles. The cars are antiques. The motorcycles are the latest state of the art. And when he passed, at first I was kind of relieved on his behalf. He lived an incredible life. Right up, I was at his birthday party just a few months before he went. And he was a little bit impaired, but still with full dignity. The professor was still in the house. And but at one point he told me, look, I'm a year past my sell-by date. I'm not supposed to even be here. And then another year went by. And so when he passed, my first feeling was, all right, Neil, great. You had an incredible life, and what a great punctuation. That's how you do it. And then some time went by, and he's not around. And I miss him. I wish he hadn't gone, and sure, he had a great life. So he's fine. I'm not so fine. I wish he was still here. And I just really miss him.
You know, we touched on so many things during that interview. It was like the biggest roller coaster ride of all time. You know, we're talking about the Clark Kent stuff, Oysterhead, him writing, him making me mad by ranking Zenyatta Mondatta solo. But I get it. I mean, you heard the stories. I get it. It's like when you're a kid. I'm going to eat it, but I'm not going to like it. But getting to hear straight from his mouth about the stories of Sting and Andy and the Behind My Camel song and all that, just to getting to hear that from him was just, that was amazing. I've actually waited a long time to ask him that, and I didn't ask him last time I spoke with him. So I swore if I get Stewart back in the phone, or if I get to speak with him again, I am going to bring that up, which I remembered this time. So boom, there you go. And then finally we end, with Neil and him passing, and it just seems like the music world, the drum world will never be the same. And you can hear it in Stewart's voice. He just misses his friend. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed this. Thank you so much for tuning in and listening in on the podcast. And like I told Stewart, I am going to make a top 10, but it's probably going to be 20 for the Police. So an all-time top song list. Look out for that. That's going to be coming out pretty soon. So in the meantime, I'd like to hear some suggestions. Let me hear your favorite Police songs. You can drop those in the comments below if you're watching on YouTube, on the podcast, in the comments, or whatever they call that on the podcast stuff. Just know that I do check, and I try to respond as quick as possible. The quickest way, though, is to find me on the social stuff, and that is TOMMYMARZBAND, Tommy Marz Band, Twitter, Instagram. That's the easiest place to find me, and the quickest. Unless you have my cell phone number, that would actually be the quickest, because if you send me a text, I'll get that one right away. But I'm not giving you my number, unless we become friends. All right, I am out. I'm delirious, so I'm about to go queue up an 80s movie. On deck tonight, it is Running Scared. Gregory Hines, Billy Crystal, Jimmy Smits. I remember this movie ruling to rule all movies back in the day. It's been a while since I watched it, so I'm about to go watch that right now. All right, it is Tommy Marz, and you've been listening to Sound Vapors.